Reap the whirlwind.
Hello and welcome to the Swedish Transformers podcast. It's me, Linda, the loyal Autobot.
And with me, Gustav, the treacherous Decepticon.
And...
Oh, sorry. and me, the one who suddenly forgot what to say. It's Simon Furman joining the podcast, and very happy to be here.
Yay!
We're very happy to have you.
We are so happy to have you. Oh, yes. So, a little bit of background. You're mostly known for writing Transformers Marvel initial comic books and also for Hasbro's Transformers. You also took over the writing for the Marvel US Transformers comic book after Bob Budiansky. How does it feel?
Yeah, it felt good. It wasn't just that I was taking over from Bob on the US Transformers comic. It was my first work for Marvel US, and so it was a big deal for me. Bob had already told me that the book might be cancelled in 6 issues. So I didn't have high hopes for a long run on the book, but it was going to be my foot in the door at Marvel America, which I was very excited about, and I hoped it would lead to other things. As it happened, we stretched that 4 issues or so to 25 issues. Yeah. So it was quite a good long run in the end.
And not only that, you also wrote later on for Doctor Who magazine, and you wrote for Thundercats UK, Action Force UK, and some other titles. How can you separate them all apart when you write so many things?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of used to switching tracks between different projects, different things. For a while I was writing a whole lot of different stuff for Marvel as well as Transformers. I worked on She-Hulk, and I've worked on What If and Alpha Flight for a long run. I did about a couple of years on Alpha Flight. So, it was just great. I love the variety. So, one moment you're writing about warring robots in disguise, and the next Canadian superheroes, and I was, just enjoying being very much in the Marvel universe, which I grew up reading. So very exciting time, the, late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah. And don't forget good old Death Head.
Yeah, Death's Head. Well, for Marvel UK, we created Dragon's Claws and Death's Head, and a few other original titles back in the day. So, it was a great period, from the mid 80s to the sort of mid 90s. I was, busy both sides of the Atlantic in comics, Transformers UK and US, and Marvel UK and US, and a few bits and pieces of other things. It was a very busy time.
Yeah. Sorry. And then you also wrote to television, where you wrote to Beast Wars, the Transformers 1999, and then also X-Men Evolution from 2000 and 2001, and then also Adam. And I didn't know you were writing for Adam. I remember that from my childhood, one of the best shows that I saw on television.
I don't think it's Adam.
Yeah.
No, I don't know that one. I did, I did a few things. I was lucky enough to meet Bob Forward and Larry DiTilio, who were the script editors on Beast Wars at one of the early BotCons. And, both Bob and Larry, lovely people, and we sat and chatted, and that kind of led to me working on Beast Wars.
Okay.
Then when Bob, unfortunately, by the time I got to write an episode, that was the end of Beast Wars. But Bob and we had a good working relationship, so we moved on to a couple of other things. We worked on, as you say, X-Men Evolution together, and a series called Roswell Conspiracies, Alien Myths and Legends, Legend of the Dragon, I think I worked on, and Dan Dare, which was a 3D animated, the British space hero.
Oh yeah.
So there was quite a busy time, really, and for the next few years I was fully TV animation, and then I worked on a series more recently called the Mad Hatter Chronicles, which ran over here on one of the kids' TV channels.
Yeah, I guess Wikipedia lied to me about Atom then. Can't get everything right.
Yeah, Atom. I worked on the comic version of Atom.
Ah, okay, that's maybe why.
Meanie, but no, never actually wrote for the animated series.
Okay, then I get it. Okay, because Wikipedia said you wrote for the TV television, but that's why I got so surprised when I saw it. I didn't know this.
Simon looked quite surprised himself.
Someone wrote wrong.
I'm getting on. Maybe I forgot.
Do you prefer writing in comic books or the TV shows?
They're both really. They're different. Comics is much more a solo effort. Yes, you work with an artist sometimes, but largely you just write the script, it goes to an editor and it goes to an artist, and a couple of weeks later or a month later out it comes. But with TV animation, it's a lot more collaborative. You're working with a team. Scripts go through lots of drafts and changes, and so I mean it's just a longer term thing, and it's still very satisfying. Lovely seeing your name on the TV screen and things like that. But it's different. You have to let go a little bit, not be as precious about TV animation, because it is going to go through a lot of changes and a lot of different hands.
Yeah. One last question before I leave this to Gustav. But you also were the dude who wrote the conflict between Unicron and Primus, right? Why? What went through your mind?
Well, when we saw the animated movie, or rather, first we read the script for the animated movie, and then we saw it. I was just very impressed with the idea of Unicron, and kind of wasn't so keen on that whole origin of the Transformers as being a slave race of the Quintessons that the cartoon series had established. And since we were separate, I felt more or less at liberty to come up with our own origin of the Transformers. So, I was largely brought up on the comics of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, which were, Fantastic Four and Thor. And they always had these amazing cosmic space operas with big, threats like Galactus and Ego, the living planet. And, I loved that stuff. It very much fed my imagination as a kid. And so when I got the chance, I thought, well, here's this great being called Unicron. We know next to nothing about him from the animated movie or it. And maybe what we need is he's part of the backstory of the whole Transformers. And originally in the UK comic, in issue 150, I think, we just spun our own, mythical beginning of time origin of Unicron, and I felt we needed a yin for that yang, or yang for that yin, whichever way round, and that was Primus. And that, as much as Unicron was a planet, Primus had become a planet. I like the idea of a balance to everything. So, good and evil, chaos and order, couple of, planets. So it just seemed to work. And, we were lucky. We were allowed to just create an origin for the Transformers back in those days. Hasbro, these days, you probably have to run the whole idea past the Hasbro team, and they'd have thoughts about it. But back in the day, we were lucky enough, I guess, that, Hasbro were very much like, hey, yeah, that sounds fine. Create an origin. So we were lucky we got away, in a way, with doing that. But it's lovely now that, Hasbro have absorbed that origin and that character Primus into their mythology, their, sort of canon of Transformers. So, that's always very gratifying when something we created more or less on spec became part of the Hasbro verse.
Yeah. For me personally, I do like the conflict between Unicron and Primus more than I do like the origin of where Transformers came with Quintessence. So I really like how it came out. Gustav, what do you prefer? Slaves or Unicron and Primus? Quintessence or Unicron and Primus?
I like the comic one. I buy the cartoon one because it's easier, I think, to portray in a cartoon show. But in the comics, I prefer this one.
Yeah.
I have one question there, Simon. When writing Unicron, did Orson Welles' voice have any inspiration for you when doing it?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. We probably wrote, Target 2006 before we saw the movie. The way it probably panned out is when we finally saw it, we'd written a chunk of or all of that story. But nevertheless, yes, do I and subsequently always think of Orson Welles' voice. I mean, I think of most of the Transformers characters as their cartoon voices. How can you write Optimus Prime without thinking it's Peter Cullen saying it or Frank Welker? So yeah, I always have that in mind, and Starscream particularly, I always think, that it's that voice I've got in my head when I'm writing him, that slightly shrill, shrieky voice.
Yeah. Well, Gustav, I allow you to take further your questions.
Thank you. I obey. First one thing, Simon, I'm a little curious now in COVID time. It says one of your favorite beers is Corona. Has that changed since the COVID? Or are you still loving the Corona?
It had changed a while before Corona, so it wasn't just a reaction to that. But I did at one point walk into a supermarket here during the height of the pandemic, and the shelves had more or less been picked clean of beers, except for Corona. There were crates of the stuff, so I didn't mind. I found more to my taste are now, the British ales and the pale ales, the American IPAs.
Yeah.
More what I steer towards now.
Your taste develops all the time. But the Transformers question then. I think you have heard some of these questions a million times, but I guarantee you we will surprise you with some of them.
Okay.
First off, are you an Autobot or a Decepticon fan?
Probably Decepticon, because the bad guys are always more fun to write. I mean, that's why, even with the Autobots, I prefer the slightly more, sort of gung-ho ones like Grimlock and the Wreckers. I mean, I love Optimus Prime to bits as a character, but there's only so much you can do with that character a little bit. Whereas, the bad guys are just more fun, and it was great with the Marvel run, elevating. I always thought the Decepticons didn't have enough kind of leader class enemies or threats. So, it was fun to take a character like Thunderwing or Bludgeon and kind of just make them more than they maybe were in their original tech specs and toy packaging. Or even, some of them, their comics appearances, we just, ran with them a bit and turned them into bigger bad enemies. But yeah, I suppose just in terms of writing, I always think the Decepticons are more fun.
Yeah. And if you were a Transformer character yourself, who would you be?
Well, that's a good question. Who would I be? I'd probably be Cup or something.
Oh.
Telling the same old stories, adding
Great.
You know,
I can really see you as Cap.
boring everyone silly.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Grimlock.
No, I don't think I'm Grimlock really. I love
But
I love the
you
character.
have been Grimlock.
Sorry,
You used to answer as him in
that's
the
true.
comics.
Yes, but I also used to answer as Soundwave and Thunderwing, and no, not Thunderwing. Dreadwind.
Right.
So yes, I suppose I did. I was for a while, but he's not really me, Grimlock. Any of those ones.
But your favorite Transformers, is that Grimlock?
Yeah, definitely Grimlock. But I love some of the the bad guys. I like Galvatron was always a great character to write. But it's just full. Even characters. Again, I loved you taking the ones that had very little about them and building character. An example would be Razor Beast in Beast Wars, the comic I did for IDW. Very sort of funny looking little toy, but it was great to take him and make him into hopefully an interesting character.
Yeah. So you prefer writing the characters that are like Wolverine and Batman instead of Superman?
Yeah, probably that would be about the right sort of level. Yeah.
Anti-heroes kind of thing.
Yeah, anti-heroes, conflicted characters. Grimlock, I always think, just walks a fine line between being a good guy or a bad guy, and that's more interesting to me as a writer.
Yeah. And let's see here. Talking about that, then Thundercracker should be an interesting character for you.
Yeah, I don't know whether I've ever done over much with Thundercracker, but a great character. I think I've written all the sort of main bots at some time or other. But yeah, Thundercracker, I don't know whether I've really highlighted. I can't think of a story offhand. I know they did a lot with him in the later IDW stories, but yeah, I think he was always more just a slightly the supporting cast in my stories.
And if you're going to be a Transformers character, you need an alt mode. What alt mode would you choose?
I think I would definitely have some kind of flying beast mode. That would suit me.
That would be nice.
Yeah. And the next question is a steaming potato back in the day. It has chilled a little now. Genders in Transformers. What are your opinions? Female or male or non-gender?
Yeah, I mean, the way I always approached it back in the day was there was not, I know they were he and him, but I didn't really bother over much with the idea of gender. I just thought they're robots, really. Latterly, of course, that's come much more into it. I'm working on something at the moment that I can't talk about, but it involves, some of the female characters. So, that's been interesting and fun to do. So yeah, you've got your Transformers evolves and changes with the years, and as a writer, you've got to be able to go with that. So yeah, it's fine. The brand has very much embraced that, and as a writer, I do too.
Yeah, I think the ratio nowadays is more similar to the real world.
Yeah.
But when it first came out with RC and stuff, it was kind of forced. I believe it might have been very difficult to try to bring it into the comics.
Yeah, I mean, we did feature RC in, we put her in a kind of jokey one at one point, but we did, she featured quite heavily in Space Pirates and a few of the other ones, and she was a fun character to write. I liked her in the movie, so I had no problem at all with the idea of RC, Elita, all those characters. It was just, the balance was so skewed in those days in terms of the available characters and cast that to make the distinction seemed to only throw a spotlight on that imbalance. So, largely, as much as possible, I ignored the issue. And, when I don't, it tends to be, sort of, the fan backlash is always negative. So, I'm inclined just to, where it calls for it, fine, they're in there, and that's no problem to me. But I just didn't want to be push. It always smacked slightly of tokenism originally, that there was only 3 or 4 female characters at tops, maybe less. So back in the day, I just made it not an issue, and now it's just part of the cast. So everything changes.
Natural evolution.
And changes for the better, I think. The fan base has changed, I would say. So I think that the fact that it's more, diverse in terms of the cast roster is a really good thing.
We did talk to Andrew too, and we asked about Ratchet, and because Ratchet was supposed to be a female character, and the team decided that, or actually a woman decided that Ratchet has to be a male because it's a boy toy, only boys toy, and that's how things were back in the time. Also,
I saw something posted recently on one of the Transformers wiki pages where it was some kind of original, instructions to the writers, I guess, on the animated TV show, and underlined in, sort of thick black type was, "This is a boys' action show."
Yeah.
So it just was, it was a different era back then.
Yeah, I remember it. I was born in the 90s. I don't know all the juicy parts, but like even today when you go into toy store or something, you have boys for blue and girls for pink, and then you have the middle ground too in some places, and that's pretty nice. But I see mostly boys on the boy side and mostly girls on the girls side, so there is something. It's just how it works, psychology. So let girls be girls and boys be boys if they want to, in my opinion.
And in the thing I'm working on at the moment, the female characters and the male characters are on an utterly equal footing in terms of their billing in the thing. So it's just that now you have that pool of characters you can call on there to make it a more balanced thing.
But if you're writing something nice now, Simon, you have to put in Dynamite Slash. It's a girl, it's a dinosaur, you have to.
That's why you have it.
Dinobot Slash is in Earth Wars. So we in fact, the female cast in Earth Wars is, growing every time we bring in new characters. So that's really good to see as well. I was really pleased we got to bring Flame War into the story because, Ben Yi is a good friend of mine, and it was lovely to have that character that they created for the BotCon comics in the actual game. So I think it's just generally a healthy and positive evolution.
And talking about things you used to do, Simon, and still does a little bit, I must say, you often kill off background characters. Is this a nasty habit, or is something you do on purpose?
It's a war. I always thought it was unlikely that everyone was going to make it through. So, the fact that when, in US 75, Unicron attacks the planet, it couldn't be that everybody survives. There had to be casualties on a reasonable scale. And I just think that reflects a sort of reality that, it is a war. There are going to be, fatalities. And I think, even the audience back then sort of appreciated that we weren't sort of sugarcoating anything. And, and while people may have not liked that we'd killed off this or that character, I think it grounded it a little more and made it a little more poignant and believable. And, we had moments like Scorponok and Optimus Prime, after he's more or less sacrificed himself, Scorponok. I just think it helped really. And, often what I get from fans of then who've grown up now is that, they say, well, it was great. You never wrote down to us. You never just assumed we were kids who couldn't handle fairly hard hitting or, complex storylines. And, so death was just a part of that. And, we didn't want to sugarcoat it either. And of course they were robots, so it's not as gratuitous as killing off a large human cast.
Yeah, I heard some rumors online that it's because you're a West Ham fan.
I'm not sure I draw a connection between the two, but yes, I'm a West Ham fan, and normally at this point I say, yes, I know, and there they are down the bottom of the division, but this season it's actually okay to be a West Ham fan.
Yeah, that's fun. I actually saw West Ham in London many years ago against Wimbledon.
Okay.
But I think the rumors are based on the movie with Elijah Woods about hooligans.
No, but we did get in trouble once for a UK cover, Transformers cover. It was an Ultra Magnus cover, and he's in a gladiator situation, and on the poster behind him it says live from the planet Millwall, and Millwall was a football team who had a bad reputation, their fans, for hooliganism. And we did get in, well, not exactly trouble, but we got a few complaints from Millwall fans who thought we were singling them out, which maybe we were. But,
that many then.
It was a funny joke, and we just dropped it in there.
Good
Still
thing
funny.
Millwall is a small team.
Yeah.
We'll not talk about football. It's Transformers time.
Welcome to the football podcast.
Exactly. But the Transformers, how did it come to be you?
With Transformers?
Yes.
Well,
how did you come to be the godfather of Transformers?
by pure luck and being just the available writer at the time. I'd never heard of Transformers when I was invited to come in to the Marvel UK offices and meet Sheila Cranner, who was the editor then of the UK comic. She just, all I knew was they were looking for writers for a comic, and there was one storyline, Man of Iron, already in progress, and Sheila just handed me a pile of toy reference and pack shots and tech specs and said, what we need stories. And from there, that tiny little start. And I think because very quickly I was on staff and just there and available as they needed more stories, it just sort of grew from that. And largely my whole comics career, apart from a little bit before when I worked on Scream, a little horror comic, has involved Transformers in some shape or form, which is now 37 years or something. So yeah, it's a lot of Transformers.
When you started working on the Transformers comics, what was your inspiration?
I was a very new comics writer, so I think right from the start, I just looked at all the hard work that Bob Budiansky had done in creating all these character bios, and they were great. They were so rich, and everything you needed for a story was there. So it was only a matter of going through and bringing together the right characters to provoke the right action and story. And I think ever since, I've always approached writing the same way, where I'll start with characters first and larger concept ideas later. I think the characters tend to drive the story. So all I did with those original ones, especially things like Enemy Within, was look for those, for a start, characters that weren't necessarily as much in the spotlight in the US comic. We used Brawn, I think, very, because he just didn't seem to feature very much. Starscream we used and Ravage, but I think it was just finding the characters who would kind of bounce off each other and react to each other and just propel the story. So I think that was just how I approached it back then. Bob had done all the hard work. It was just a matter of maneuvering those characters into an interesting confrontation or storyline or character arc, mini character arc.
Yeah. Did you get the freedom you wanted from Hasbro?
Yeah, Hasbro, my whole experience with Hasbro has been amazingly good. In the initial days, we ran everything past the UK office, but very rarely did we get any kind of negative feedback or changes requested. Sometimes they would ask us to time our stories with a product launch, which we were always very happy to do, especially as we used to be able to tag the comic onto their TV advertising for the toy line. So things like New Leaders became Target 2006, Galvatron Ultra Magnus. Then there were the Headmasters and Special Teams. So, we were more than happy to sort of tie things up with their product launches. But overall, Hasbro let us do what we wanted. And, they were very accommodating. Same when I was on the US comic. And really the same since. It's always been a very fruitful working relationship. And I've, over the years, I've developed friendships with the people at Hasbro now. So, it's always lovely when I get the chance to, chat to Tom or, whoever's sort of dealing with that license side of it, Michael Kelly or whoever. I've met these people at conventions and it's just a very easygoing relationship now I have with them. I think, they kind of know I'm not going to mess with something in a way that's detrimental to Transformers. So there's a lot of trust as well. But just generally, we have, a very good working relationship. And when, say we want to do the Beast Wars storyline that's currently running in Earth Wars, we just had a little powwow with Hasbro and Space Ape and just made sure everybody was on the same kind of page about what we were intending to do. And, generally the feedback is all positive and, well, how about we do this? Or you could add this character into the mix. So, it's just a very good, I think everyone's just pulling in the same direction with Transformers, the creatives and Hasbro.
Yeah. I have more questions, Linda, but I see you are bursting there. So let's take some Linda questions.
Go for it.
We mentioned Marvel Comics. Then you went on to Dreamwave before that collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
And then IDW. What are the differences between the publications?
Well, I mean, Dreamwave, in many ways, there's always people remember the end of Dreamwave and the bad stuff, but really Dreamwave were quite hugely responsible for the resurgence of Transformers comics and, as a brand. When they took it over in 2002, very little was happening with Transformers. I think I just got Titan to start the reprints of the UK and Marvel UK and US material just a little before that. But largely, other than, a very sort of, there were conventions and convention comics, but really it took that Dreamwave shot in the arm to bring it back to the sort of attention of the comics buying public in a wider way. And, although they crashed and burned a bit at the end, it really paved the way for the IDW era and a lot of the TV shows, I'm sure, and movies that have followed.
Yeah.
But, the difference, Dreamwave were a young startup company full of enthusiasm, but maybe not well enough versed in the business side of it. So it was a lot of fun and creative as hell, but it was a sort of, it burned fast and then burned out. But IDW was a much more sort of together, up and running publishing outfit, and with some, sort of some real talent at the helm. So when it came to work for them, I was working very closely with Chris Ryle, and really we sat down and just built something that had legs. I think right from the start. I mean, I'm sure neither of us thought it would have run as long as it did, that little universe. But I think we both sat down and we thought, how can we do this in a way that's not Dreamwave, but still has that sort of more modern comic sensibility. And we took the Marvel Ultimate line as our sort of working model, which were these revamps of characters like Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four, but told in a much more of the now comics way. We didn't want to go retro, so it made sense to approach it in this more measured, paced, mature way, I suppose. And that became Infiltration. But very quickly we realized there was a certain impatience for giant robots hitting each other on a large scale. So, based on the feedback we were getting, because this was now the internet age, we adapted and brought in Stormbringer and the spotlights. So it was all good. The feedback really helped helped us put our foot on the accelerator a little bit. But I think generally was a real good move to have all those other strands of storytelling. And it meant that other talents could come in, like Nick Roach on Spotlight Cup. It just sort of suddenly opened the door to other writers, other creative teams, as well as me and EJ on the main book.
Yes. Any character you find hard to write about? Does it need a supporting character then, or how do you solve it?
I don't think any of the characters are necessarily hard to write. There are some I prefer writing and some I am less keen on. But when Klaus Schawinski approached me and said, would you like to kind of come in on the Spotlight wheelie that I'm doing for IDW and help me craft the story, I was happy to do it. Wheelie, probably my least favorite character, maybe, but we had a lot of fun with it. So it tests you. I like things that push me to be to make a character like Wheelie more than the sum of their parts. So no, there's no bad characters. I suppose only bad stories featuring those characters.
Sorry, Spotlight Wheelie, was that the Spotlight where he was saying hi to a dinosaur and lost his arm?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A planet that later they bring back into the main storyline, that planet, LV, whatever it is. But yes, that was the one. Yeah, it was fun. It was a fun little story. It was
I loved it.
It was Klaus's baby, really. I just helped out a bit with the structure and the dialogue. Yes, that was very much his story that he wanted to tell.
Yeah.
Just waiting it out, you can tell me. Speaking of that, now I'm outing one of your friends here. Sorry, Andrew Wildman, but you said it. So he was talking about when you did the Marvel comics and you were working together much. He said you were very demanding, but in a good way, and that everyone was afraid of you. Is this true?
I doubt it very much. But when I was an editor, you have to be reasonably sort of tough with creators, and if something's not right or it could be better. Andrew's first job for Marvel UK was a Transformers Christmas story. I think it was issue 198, and I'd seen his work. I'd seen lots of pages he'd done, and I knew he could do better than the first sort of pages we got through. So we had a chat, and he put sort of, and you can see the difference in the second one he did, which was Time Wars. It's almost on another level. So sometimes you just have to, if something's not working, and I would say the same with artist to writer. If something in my script isn't working, I want the artist to be able to say, there must be a better way to do this, or can we do it this way? Comics work best when it's a collaborative back and two. And working with Jeff recently, Jeff Senior on To the Death, was very much a fluid. If Jeff wanted to do something, we incorporated it. I wrote the scripts in a very loose way that allowed Jeff to just go wild or break the story down however he wanted. So it was a good way of working, just to let the artist have as much or maybe even more freedom within the story. And we created a kind of hired killer character called Killer Toa, who really wasn't in the original outline for the series, but Jeff really wanted to draw an alien creature in it. So that was a very we changed direction, and all for the better of the eventual comic. And now Killer Toa's starring in his own 3-panel strips. So it's sometimes it's great to have that sort of meeting of minds rather than just draw this.
The writers that has come after you now on Transformers, anyone particular you like to read the stories of?
Yeah, well, I think it hit a high point when James and John were working on it, or working on the two ongoings. I think that was a very fruitful period, and I love that, rather than, as a few of the other writers had done, try and throw everything out that I'd established, they very much pulled it all back into the continuity and did new and interesting things with it. John created this whole notion of the multiple ores that Shockwave had seeded planets with, and James just pulled all sorts of strands from as early as Infiltration and the early Spotlights into his stories, but also did their own thing with them. So I think that was my favorite period of the IDW latter comics.
Yeah. Did any of these writers ask you for any tips or contact you in any way?
Oh, well, I was in touch with James anyway, and to a certain extent John, because I think I was working on Regeneration 1 during this time. So I don't think they ever consulted me, because they don't have to. They're the writers propelling the story now. But I was always very happy to see them take the things we'd established in those early series and just pay them off in a bigger, more sort of, convoluted is not the right word, but almost more sort of intricate way. James particularly took little things I'd done and wove them into this amazing, sort of idea he was creating. So it was lovely to see those things not just go to waste. The reason I was so disappointed with All Hail Megatron was I felt that everything we'd set up had just been retroed out of existence almost. And I know they sort of changed tack a little bit during that series, but I was just disappointed that they'd gone backwards, it felt to me, rather than forwards.
Yeah. Now one last question, Linus. Then I'll let you ask my questions. Sorry, I'm always getting excited.
No problem. You took like all of my questions. So
sorry, Linda. Sorry. But in a situation where Unicron is attacking Cybertron, you can say one character and you have to kill another one. Which ones?
Wow. Save one character. Well, who would I save? That's a good question. I would probably have a last wrecker standing. I don't know which, but I'd probably have one wrecker still standing. Maybe if he was still around, Impactor.
Mm.
You know, I always had a very soft spot for the ones I'd created, and weren't initially toys at all. And who would I kill off? There's a long list. I don't know. I'd probably kill off Wheelie. Character. Poor Wheelie.
Rest in peace, Wheelie. Now, Linda, hope I left something for you there.
Actually, just one. Thank you, Gustav.
I can send you some of mine.
Yeah, well, I can probably come up with some other questions. Shit happens when I let Gustav take command. It just goes on,
Yeah, I'm a Decepticon. I take charge.
Yeah. Well, as an Autobot, or whatever, is there any difference in how you write script depending on if it's a comic or a TV show back in the time?
Yeah, I mean, they're mostly the same. It's a TV script is similar to a comic script. All you're doing is calling out action shots and dialogue and propelling the plot, but they feel very different. For a start, comics are very rarely read out loud, so I'm always a little nervous about writing dialogue that's going to be spoken, because not all comic dialogue reads well. It struck me that when they made the original movie adaptation of Watchmen, the dialogue in Watchmen is utterly wonderful to read on the page, but some of it said out loud just doesn't quite work.
Yeah.
So it's always a difficult moment, and I really have to. I think I focus much more on my dialogue when I'm writing for TV. I wrote a Doctor Who audio adventure at one point, and was very nervous about that in terms of, Peter Davison, who was my doctor of choice in the drama, was actually going to record these lines, and I was lucky enough to go along to the recording. So I was very nervous about how, especially what they call technobabble lines were going to come out. But he was an amazingly professional actor, and he made it all look and sound very good. But it's and whenever I've written for the live script readings at Auto Assembly and BotCon and the like, it's also a very nervous experience, because you don't want these very talented people looking at the lines and going, well, this sucks. So yeah, it's a little more nervy with dialogue.
Yeah. Is it some difference if you do scripts for different companies? Like, was there any difference between when you wrote for Marvel or DC? Do they want the scripts in a specific way, or is it all up to you?
When I made the transition from Marvel UK to Marvel US, they worked in a completely different, in America, they worked in a completely different style. In the UK, we worked with what everybody tends to use now, which is full script.
Yeah.
And that meant you were doing panel by panel descriptions and page by page and dropping all the dialogue in at that stage. But Marvel US worked what they call Marvel plot style, which was just to condense the story into pages 3 to 6, 7 to 8, however you broke it down, and maybe suggest dialogue, but add the dialogue in later once the art was done. So that was a different way of working, but I enjoyed both ways.
Yeah.
But no, it's I think otherwise my experience of working for Marvel UK, Dreamwave, IDW, Marvel, DC has always been very similar. A script is a script is a script. Once you know how to present it, I think you're allowed a certain amount of latitude about whether you're very terse with your panel descriptions. I always remember some of the earliest scripts I saw were John Wagner and Alan Grant Judge Dredd scripts, which were pared down to the bare minimum. It would literally be Dredd on bike, Dredd shoots perp, Dredd was, it was really, the bare minimum. And I liked that. I thought that was great because, again, it gave the artist a certain amount of freedom within that full script.
Sometimes less is more when it comes to controlling an artist.
Yeah, and certainly with To the Death, it worked better, I think, as a collaborative thing by me doing the loosest possible upfront bit of storytelling that allowed Jeff to add to it, to layer it, to throw stuff out if he wanted, add new stuff in. And I think, To the Death is all the better for it.
Yeah. How is it these days? Like when you do scripts, how does it work? Or is it also like different from depending on project?
Depends on the project, but I'm working on a lot of game projects at the moment. And that's, Earth Wars and a couple of other things. And that's yet another kind of writing discipline because, again, you're working, often on spreadsheets with a team, contributing, adding layers to things, tweaking other writers' work or having other writers tweak your, so it's again another one of those ones, a bit like TV animation, but more so, where you just have to not be precious about what you've written and accept that it's going to go through many iterations before it reaches whatever stage of game is actually out there.
Yeah. So what's your favorite sorry, I've been having a little bit of to drink already. Already I can't talk. But what is your favorite project, like, ever?
Well, that's tough. I mean, I would probably say, just because it's supported my whole career, Transformers is high up there. But, I've enjoyed a lot of the recent things I've been working on. It's often the way. The things that you're currently involved in are the things that, you're excited about. And, apart from To the Death and, Transformers work, Transformers 84 was a lot of fun to be able to go back and revisit those original stories and add new layers. And I've been working on a thing called The Vigilant for Rebellion, who published 2000 AD, which is a collection, a sort of team book featuring British superheroes from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And that has been great fun because these really are the characters I grew up reading, even before Marvel Comics. So that was fun to be able to play around with these, characters I read as a very young kid.
Interesting. Yeah. Is there any nightmare project that you felt was just terrible or just a bad experience?
There's been some that have been less than wonderful. Strangely, one of the ones that I never loved at the time, and it always felt like slightly trying to get a square peg in a round hole, was Brute Force. But strangely, Brute Force has the last thing I thought would resurface and be in a collected edition and being name dropped in one of the Marvel 616 programs that were on Disney Plus recently was Brute Force. But there it is, getting some love after all this time.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those ones. It was, at best you could say kind of quirky idea, but it was fun to do. It wasn't really a nightmare, just not really. I suppose I was invested 110% in, whereas normally I try to give it my all. Brute Force was just something, I don't think Bob Budiansky, who was editing it, was 100% behind it either. So,
yeah, it's like this thing with robots and animals, right? Combined. Yeah, I had to check it up because I don't even know this one.
Yeah, it's animals in exosuits.
Yeah.
It was kind of, it was like I say, kind of quirky idea.
Yeah.
But strangely, like I say, it's made a bit of a sort of comeback in terms of since Disney bought Marvel. We've got a trade paperback collection of it, which I never thought would happen. And they made a Marvel 616 program primarily about it. And just recently, somebody pointed out that in the MODOK series that's running currently on one of the channels, there's a billboard at one point with Brute Force on it, in the background. So, these things never go away, really. But no, I don't think there's been nightmare projects. There's been disappointments. When I was working on StarCraft for DC Wildstorm, we had a whole 100-page graphic novel that never saw print. Really sadly, they killed the comic, and the graphic novel was still meant to come out but didn't. And that was a shame, really, because a lot of work went into that. And I suppose that it's more disappointments when things like Necro War or some of the Dreamwave Transformers things I never got to finish, or they never finished in print. That's always a disappointment to me, to not see something through to the end.
Yeah. I don't have so much experience with writing comics, but is there anything more you would like to talk about when you're writing a comic, like when something terrible happens to you, like feel that, or try to like put yourself into the trauma of, for example, Last Stand of the Wreckers or something? Sorry, did you write Last Stand?
No,
sorry, my bad.
I love writing comics, so I don't think I've ever had a trauma writing comics, because it's such a fun thing to do. And generally I've never really suffered from writer's block or anything. I suppose another disappointment was when we were going to do, we did Death's Head for a Marvel US comic called Amazing Fantasy, and originally it was supposed to be the classic Death's Head, but then suddenly it was this Death's Head 3.0, and a visual thing lifted from the Planet Hulk storyline. And that to me was a great disappointment, that I couldn't get to do the original Death's Head. But then these things come around, and we got to do a one-page story in the Marvel Comics 1001 issue recently. Nick Roach drew that. So no horror stories, just some disappointments that things did or didn't happen that could have.
Have you ever written any books, or do you feel that you would be into writing some sort of Transformers novel or anything in that style?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't written a lot of prose, but I've done a couple of bits. I did a short story, a Beast Wars prose story, for a paperback compilation or collection of short stories. I managed to take one of the ideas that Bob Forward and I had talked about for the TV show and turn it into a short prose story. offhand I can't remember the name of it, but it was a little paperback with different writers doing Transformers short stories.
Oh, what was the name of that?
You know what? I will have a copy of it somewhere.
Yeah.
Let me just, if I can walk away from the podcast for a moment,
Yeah, that's fine.
hands on it. But this is where I hope loads of books don't fall off the shelf. Wait, there we go. There we go. It was called Transformers Legends. I shall hold it up to the camera.
Ah, yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a little sort of paperback book, and there were maybe 5 or 6 stories, and mine was called A Meeting of Minds, which kicks off the book.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, but there haven't been many.
Yeah.
Was it in that book the 6th Dinobot appears for the first time?
Really?
I just saw the cover. I think the plesiosaur was a new one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't. I must admit, it's a long time since I've read the stories in here. But yeah, so it was. That was one. I wrote for a company here. I wrote a thing called Spirit of the Pharaoh, which was also a novel based on an animated TV script I'd written for them. So little bits, but overall, no. Haven't done much. Excuse me. Rose at all.
Bless you. Yeah, there isn't a lot of novel books in Transformers. There's like 4 maybe? Exodus and Gustav, help me.
Well, there's James's book, Eugenesis.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there are not many novels. I'm sure there's some novelizations of the movies and so on and so forth, but no, there isn't a great deal of strangely written, prose fiction in Transformers.
But we have the Transformers: The Ultimate Guide by you.
Yep.
Oh yeah, yeah. Tell more.
Well, I've written quite a few sort of side books on Transformers. The Ultimate Guide being the biggest, I suppose, but I've written various movie guides, and I even wrote, even though I'm not an artist, You Can Draw Transformers, which was a strange experience, but obviously we had Guido to illustrate the book. I'd been an editor, so I suppose I could talk with a reasonable authority, but that was a strange one. But yeah, quite a few Transformers books, but not really prose books.
Yeah. I forgot to mention a project that I think you're still working on it, maybe? Let's see. Haha.
Yes to the Death, yes.
Yeah. How's it going?
It's going well. We've now got them in nice slipcase sets. It was only ever going to be a 10-issue series. And, we've spun Killer Tower off into his own series, and we're serializing To the Death in Shift, which is a anthology comic here.
Yeah.
I'll show you. Oops, let's try and get her To the Death cover. There we go.
Yep.
So we have got Shift, which is running both To the Death and Killer Tower at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's still with Jeff Senior.
Still with Jeff. Well, yes, Jeff is still doing the Killer Tower stuff. And, we've put the series into a couple of slipcases. So that's slipcase 1 and that's slipcase 2. So, all the little comics slip into those.
It's really beautiful how you made that. Too bad I didn't buy that one. My wallet
is screaming at me right now.
So yeah, it's still going along, and hopefully soon we will get the slipcases into previews, so they'll be available to the American market, which they haven't been, or not easily anyway. So we're hoping that sort of Diamond order will give us another sort of lease of life on the series, because really it was only ever sold at conventions and in UK comic stores and online.
Yeah, I remember how much I had to fight to get these to the death comic books. I bought one in 2019 from you, Simon, and I got it signed. And later on, I bought the rest of them because I really liked the style, and I got some space in my bookshelf.
When you come over, we'll get you some slipcases.
Thank you. Yes, I think I need to buy myself a new bookshelf.
Yeah,
I'm actually,
I need new bookshelves as well.
Yeah, I just have a tiny one, I'm a minimalist. I'm not collecting on books.
Yeah.
And then it all went to scrap.
Linda is always yelling at me because when I read a comic, I read it and then I put it in a slip case in plastic, and she thinks that's what was it you called it, Linda?
Just a waste of time and effort. Just let the book age like wine.
Yeah, but there's this vogue now for sticking your comics in, these sort of CGC frames and putting them on the wall, which I kind of think is a weird thing as well. I want my comic books where I can get at them and read them.
Yeah, now CGC is not my stuff. But speaking of Transformers, then, when the model ended, how much time did you have to prepare for that? And how much do the 84 comics play into this?
More with the end of Transformers Marvel US, that one was more or less dealt with Regeneration 1, because we didn't get to do a lot of the tie up the storylines that we had running. So Regeneration 1 dealt with that. And 84 was quite different. It felt like what we were doing was going back to the very beginning. In many cases before I was even involved in the stories, even though elements of my stories have crept into those. Really the original Transformers 84 dealt completely just with issue 1 of the American series and Man of Iron of the UK series. So, really, it was never an idea to finish off any of my storylines in there.
But to tie things up.
Yeah.
Sorry, I jumped in, Linda.
No,
Continue.
Don't worry. I'm just gonna... Simon, do you know what Gustav calls you?
I really don't. Do I want to know?
I think you
Pretty Simon. I always say it's pretty Simon.
No. No, it's Sour Simon.
Sour Simon.
It's after the interview with Andrew Wildman, and he said you were so demanding, and said, "Oh yeah, that's Sour Simon for you." Yeah.
That Andrew Wildman needs to toughen up.
Need to go down, get him some spanking and some work to do. Here's another script for Transformers. Get to
Linda
work.
always gives me the evil eye when I say it.
Don't call him that. He's our guest now. Yeah.
We have a couple of questions from our guests. Should we take one now, Linda?
Yeah, we take one now.
Okay.
We have I have been waiting to show this for a long time.
We know, Gustav. It's a question from a guest that asks you something, Simon.
I think you know this guy pretty well.
Yeah, I think so too.
He was the writer before you.
Okay.
So let's see if you can see the screen.
Yep.
Then let's go. Our guest will be Simon Furman.
Oh yeah, Simon.
Yeah. Okay. And Andrew Wildman asked you a question. We would like you to ask Simon a question.
Sure. Simon, when are you going to buy me my next beer?
Okay, good. Well, my answer to that is when I'm next in America or Bob's next over here. It was, the good thing with me and Bob is we, over the years become firm friends, and whenever he's in London we hook up, whenever I'm in New York we get together. So yeah, I would imagine I can run to another beer for Uncle Bob, as I refer to him.
Uncle Bob.
Uncle
Is it
Bob.
true about the arrangementship that every beer when you meet is on you?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I'm not sure I've seen Bob reach for his wallet. No, that's not true.
No, but it was part of the contract. I give you Transformers. The rest of your life, you have to buy me beer.
Yeah, probably. I probably owe Bob big.
Buy him
It was
sour
a
beer
beautiful
next
time
time.
talking with him.
Yes.
Well, I will take the end questions, Gustav. You sit there and look pretty.
I will try.
So, any project you're working on right now that you can mention?
No, the only things, there's a couple of things I can't mention just because in one case, certainly they're a long way off sort of being announced. But, I'm doing more with Rebellion on those British superheroes, which is, very exciting for me. And, hopefully that will, one will come out this year and hopefully more next year on that. And, obviously Kilatoa, we're doing new Kilatoa, which will appear in Shift Comic first run. And at some point we'll get all that Kilatoa stuff colored up and in a little one shot or something. Otherwise, I continue to work on Earth Wars, Transformers Earth Wars, which is great fun. They continue to let me write whatever, sort of breaking the fourth wall nonsense I like in those stories.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fun. And, like I say, I'm working on another game at the moment and a couple of other things, but, none of them, I'm afraid, I can talk about at the moment.
I have a personal question, a little bit more that I just came up with. Is there any possibility that you would write a Christmas story?
A Christmas story? Well, if, funnily enough, the Christmas stories we normally gave to other writers back in the day. Normally, that was the bit where I stepped back and let other writers have a play around. But yeah, sure. Never say never with Transformers is pretty much my motto now.
Yeah, it's Christmas in let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months.
There we go. You never know.
Yeah, I'll wait. But there will be more Transformers from you in the future.
Oh, for sure. Strangely, it really does never end in terms of, I seem to be always working on something Transformers related, and not just Earth Wars, So yeah, Transformers is always a big part of my current workload.
Yeah, I think you helped to write a comic book that are exclusive for the Retcon here in Sweden.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with that. Using all the sort of somewhat unfortunately named characters in one.
Perhaps Erector.
Yeah. Windbreaker. Yeah, no, we used them all. But
that's so funny.
Yeah, no, one way or another, I foresee many more years of Transformers.
Yeah.
That's excellent news.
Putting feminists into a Transformers comic book. Why are there no females Transformers? I remember there's an episode like that. I bet it's you, Simon, who wrote it for ages ago. There was this comic, I think it was a comic book. The feminists were asking Optimus Prime why there is no female bots. Yeah. And then they built one.
That was our slightly jokey RC story, but, experience has taught me it's better not to sort of, try and be funny with these things. So, Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
looking back at it now, I'm actually happy that it's there.
You know, those 5-page stories we did for the UK comic, the black and white ones,
Yeah.
often they were light, you know, throwaway stories, you know, one 5-page story done out of there. So, yeah, you know, I think my favorite one of those is the Mechanical story where Dreadwind and Darkwing just get really drunk in Mechanical. You know, 5 pages of Transformers getting paralytic. It was great fun.
I have to read them again. It's been ages. Oh yeah. That was pretty much my questions.
Should we take the next guest then?
Yeah. Who is the next guest?
We had a previous writer ask you a somewhat strange question, so why not let the nowadays writer ask you a question?
Okay.
So let's hear from Brian Ruckley here. Is it up?
Yep. Yeah.
I'll tell you what. Just worry. He must have been asked this. Must have been asked this before, but I'm kind of curious. So, let's ask Simon how he feels about humans in his Transformer stories, and whether he had any preference writing stories just with Cybertronians or just on Cybertron, or whether he actually preferred having them on Earth and with humans.
Good question.
Humans, Simon.
Yeah, you know, I think that's a really good question. And you know what? I actually like humans in Transformer stories. I think, you know, it's good. You know, much as I've written plenty just set on Cybertron, I like them being on Earth. I like the human perspective on Transformers. I think it helps, you know, and with Infiltration, say, you know, EJ and I tried very hard to make the perspective of the character of the robots a human perspective as much as possible. So when we first meet Megatron, it's Verity's eye view of him, and he's just towering over her, and she's lost for words. So I think it really helps with scale and the gravitas of the characters if you're seeing them as giants through the eyes of a human. And you know, I just think stories on Earth tend to work slightly better than stories on Cybertron, where everybody is reduced to more or less the same size and stature. You know, I like the idea that they are giant robots, and you can only get that with a human or other race perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Humans are a bit tricky, I must say, to bring into the story sometimes.
Yeah, you know, but you know, in many ways, Infiltration was driven by the humans. You know, it was all done initially from the perspective of Verity and Hunter and Jimmy, and the Transformers were, you know, barely seen in the first couple of issues, or out of their vehicle modes anyway. So, you know, I kind of like the idea of the humans driving the story, at least initially. So you get that sense of scale and power and all those things, because otherwise they tend to sort of lose stature, lose, you know, a presence without the human eye view on them.
Yeah. I think that if you don't have anything you want to promote, Simon, I know many things are secret now. The newest things that is out is the 84 comics, I believe.
Yeah, you know, the 84, you know, I would say To the Death, if anybody wants to try it, is still very much available. You can go to getmycomics.com, all one word, getmycomics.com, and they have a dedicated To the Death page, and you can order full slipcases or individual issues from there. And yeah, you know, if we have our own website at to-the-death.com if people want to go and get a sampler. There's page, there are little excerpts from each issue up there, posted up there. So, if you want to take a look at what me and Jeff have been doing recently, and like I say, Killer Toa is featuring in Shift comic at the moment, which is again available online from the Shift shop.
Yeah.
Now, Linda, you can explain the ending.
So, usually at the beginning of the podcast, we have a powerful quote. So, usually we call it Linda quote, but now when we have a guest, I give my quote to you.
Okay.
So, a Transformers quote or any other quote.
With passion.
With passion, yeah.
It would have to be. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Reap the whirlwind.
Oh, I didn't see that one coming.
No,
Nice.
me neither. That was nice.
It's a Furmanism. It features in a lot of Transformers comics. Trust me on this.
Yeah.
Prepare to reap the whirlwind is, and variations on that are featured in a lot of my comics. Like a vast predatory bird. I could reel off a few others as well, but I think we'll go with reap the whirlwind.
Yeah. So it's like your catchphrase.
Well, it's apparently one of the things I've written in lots of Transformers stories and probably other places as well.
Oh.
But at the moment, I'm collecting people saying to the death, which crops up in a lot of comics. And recently I found it in the 80s movie version of Flash Gordon. Ryan Blessed says to the death. So very pleased about that. So yeah, I'm always on the lookout if anybody can think of comic quotes or film quotes or anything where a character says to the death, let me know. I'm on Facebook and Twitter.
I will watch out for to the death in everything I see.
Perfect.
Actually, I have to mention that when I tried to get these comic books to the death, since Corona just had started, and I tried to get the comic book, so I had a really good help from the customer support from that homepage. And I think I told them that I will get this comic to the death.
Good stuff. Yeah, no, the guys who get my comics are really good.
Yeah.
Very, will help you out.
And I remember a fun joke from last Retcon when they say Simon will be sitting there signing to the death.
Oh.
Yeah, it was very nearly that.
Yeah. It was a good evening.
So we will see you in Sweden soon again, I hope.
Yes, I hope so. Yes, I hope so.
And we'll see when I can swing by in England. Hopefully I will maybe have Gustav with me too. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I can be your wingman, Linda.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
Yeah, well, do let us know once things open up again.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
I think 2022 will be our year.
It's on the way.
Sounds good. Here's to more conventions in Sweden.
Exactly. But now I always say in the end, till all are one.
May your luster never dull and your wires never cross.
Excellent.
Simon, do you have an end quote?
It never ends.
Oh, it never ends.
Transformers to the death.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Okay. Bye.